Mark?
Yeah, go for it.
All
There we
right,
go.
well, we're doing that. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the second virtual V Music Group event in the UK. Got a whole host of great sessions coming up for you today, but Mark, you are in charge of the slide deck, so I'm not going to skip ahead.
Excellent.
Um, well, do you want to go back? I guess we should make a quick
Yeah,
introduction. So I'm talking, so I'll introduce myself. My name's Ian Sanderson, been Vanguard, been part of the Veeam community for 10 years now. Helped run the V Music Group for about 6 or 7 of those. I'm sure a number of you know who I am. If not, would love to chat to you outside of this. Then Mark. Um,
yeah. I'm Matt Boothman. I'm a Veeam legend, so I've been a part of the community for probably 2 or 3 years now, and this is my first year assisting in the user group. Like Ian says, some of you may know me from attending some of the events up and down the UK. If not, quite happy for anyone to reach out at the communities, and yeah, see, looking forward to getting to know people that want to get involved. And I think we'll go on to the agenda next, Ian.
yeah, let's rock through it. So everyone who has their camera on at the moment is very kindly offered their time and expertise to talk with all you lovely people today. Give you some great insights into their technology or some things they've worked on with Veeam. Um, so to kick things off, also we do have a running order. We were having a joke before the thing started, who's doing what when. This is who's doing what when. So we'll kick off with Adrian from Veeam. He'll give us a V13 overview. I'm sure everyone's excited about that. We've had Veeam on Tour London recently. Nice recap of that coming up. And we'll have a community session with Jim Jones. Again, another great session, architecting Veeam Backup for 365 at scale. I'll not go any deeper into that and steal Jim's thunder. Sponsor session with Thomas from Scality. Again, a lot of buzz around Veeam on Tour London from Scality themselves with some of the really interesting integration those guys have got with Veeam and their object storage platforms. So excited to see that. And we have Michael with his session, Honey, I Shrunk the RPOs. Great title. Looking forward to hear about that. Then Q&A at the end. And hopefully not the only reason people are here, but it is that little carrot to keep you on the call. We have a quiz and prizes at the end, kindly sponsored by Scality. So thanks. I've got the next slide there, Mark.
Yeah, we just a couple of updates from myself and Ian. First one that people probably are not aware of is that the VMCA, the Certified Architect exam, is being retired in November, and the last date that you can take training is July the 31st. So,
Just on that, Mark, because I didn't know about this until you mentioned it last week. Is there a replacement? Is something
yeah,
happening
so
with that?
there's going to be a VMC SE training which will span a number of courses. So I believe details on that are going to be released in Q4. If people want to know anything more, just put a quick tiny URL just to the community post there that gives more information.
Awesome.
And then the next slide is a bit of breaking news off the press. After what seems to be a long time and lots of hard work, we are having an in-person event in London in the 30th of September. So more details will be coming out on the UK user group page. Again, I put just a link there. If you are interested in presenting or helping out in any way, please give Ian or myself a shout and we'll be happy to accommodate any requests. But yeah, stay tuned please for that event. Get that date in your diaries now.
See, just your picture, Mark, there though. I love how it's indistinguishable these days to figure out if it was generated by AI or not.
I'm not that graphically great, so it was AI.
Yeah, just just the gap in September, but
Yeah,
it is getting better all the time. yeah, in-person event, really looking forward to that. Love to see some of you folks on this call there in September.
Perfect. And then with that, I mean, over to Adrian. I'll stop sharing. And Adrian, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, no problem. Hello all. So just to do an introduction to myself, so Adrian Lowe, cloud systems engineer. So I focus predominantly on service providers. And yeah, just thought I'd volunteer to do a bit of a session on V13, but mostly focused on the VSA, which is the Veeam software appliance that we're sort of bringing out. We've got a beta available at the moment for those sort of approved partners. And yeah, in Q3, we have a technical preview available as well. And then hopefully earmarked for GA or general availability in Q4 as well. So just to recap then, I just want to touch on where it all started within Veeam. So for anybody that's been using Veeam for a long time, up to 15 years or so, you'll probably be a bit more familiar with here, which is the traditional sort of interface that we've been using in the past, and any points and prizes for anyone who can guess the versions. So the first print screen there was version 5, and that's where it added instant recovery. And then the second print screen that followed was actually the original sort of Veeam backup and faster copy. So that was even before my time of Veeam exposure. But what's key to note is just how this looks, how rudimental, how basic. If you've had use or had experience using Veeam, you'll see when you scale, you have DPI issues and all that sort of jazz. But what I wanted to just give you a little taster before we dive a little bit deeper is where we're going. So this is the modern user interface, a bit more dynamic, a lot more fluid, and you won't have any more of those DPI sort of issues as well when you're scaling and you're viewing on different sort of platforms as well. But overall, we're bringing it into the 21st century and making it a lot more user friendly. But again, what I wanted to touch on with the Veeam software appliance, and again, I'll drill a bit deeper on this, but I wanted to give you a bit of a brief history of time of Veeam backup and replication and the security evolution. So, bit of an overwhelming slide, so buckle up. So you can see here a bit of a quick sort of a fast sort of drive of all the different versions, all the different security features we've brought out. And by no means it's not the most extensive list. So there are stuff that you'll probably see missing on there. But what I wanted to highlight here is Veeam are constantly innovating, constantly adding new security mechanisms in place. And the latest one with the 12.1 and 12.2 and 12.3 era is the security focus. We brought out Security Compliance Analyzer, which I personally think is a brilliant tool. But I will tell you a fundamental issue which I find with that as well, which is why I'm teeing up for V13. Again, it's all about security now with the malware scanning, the incident of compromise detection and threat hunting and so on. But there's one fundamental issue I find here, and looking at the service providers and broad environments where we're rolling out different services, this is all dependent on you as a user to configure it, enable it, check it. So I don't know if it's the right term, but it's a term I'm going with. It's almost like a security technical debt that's almost a recruiting as well. So you've got lots of environments out there, lots of Veeam backup and replication, and you probably deploy it at the best practice at the time. But as you can see, there's a massive evolution here. So Q V13. And what that brings to the mix. So V13, just a quick snapshot here, is to come on a Linux-based operating system. It will support Windows as well, because obviously the majority of the Windows are all Windows today. It'll bring a much-awaited high availability into there as well. And again, we'll touch on that shortly. MFA will be enabled by default and disabled SSH by default as well. And we'll have the ability to harden those proxies and repositories. Again, if you're familiar with Veeam, we brought out the hardened Linux repository, and then we rebranded it as the hardened repository because Linux scared people. But this is all about making it so it's a downloadable, easy, secure sort of components from Veeam. And when we go to Linux, it means we can also do that from the appliance itself as well. Again, bringing out HTML5, so making a lot more of a fluid, dynamic interface, and that has a net benefit as well when you touch on things like with Veeam 1 and sort of building your own dashboards and so on. And finally, just on that note, advanced RBAC control. So no longer are we having, dare I say, sort of basic RBAC and having to use Enterprise Manager and different other products and services. We will now have what I'll call 4-dimensional RBAC control, where you can get granular as well, and I'll show you some print screens of that later. So Q, the Veeam software appliance, or the VSA, and that will be a pre-built appliance out the box with a quick setup. It'll be pre-hardened to industry standards as well, and automatic security updates, and then also be predictable. So with easy management and sort of multi-layered approval as well for when you want to change certain things as well. A lot of this stuff you can do today out the box, but it's all dependent on you doing it in a DIY or do-it-yourself fashion, which there's no wrong or right of doing that, but what you want to do is close off those back doors and make sure you've got no sort of back doors in, essentially. So you want to make sure you reduce that attack vector. So as I mentioned, you want it secure and ready to run solution that just works. Going back to that older slogan that we used to have, with pre-built, with just enough OS. So what you'll see coined is a JEOS, and that's Veeam stripped down Linux sort of appliance to make sure again that it's just what's needed in it as well, with a flexible installation media. So anything discussed today is subject to change as well. So just as an NDA, again, so you can have it as an ISO media or an OVA deployment as well. It'd be pre-hardened, as I mentioned, so industry standard, hardened from the get-go with automatic centralized security updates. And what that means for you guys is no more sort of change management windows where you're having to panic and try and patch a CVE. Now we'll roll that up and we'll control that directly from Veeam ourselves. So we take that burden off you guys. And with tighter access controls as well, so making sure there's no SSH backdoors in and so on as well, as I mentioned. And with that becomes predictable, a nice usable next gen sort of web interface, kind of like what VMware did when they sort of went into the console, having a lightweight web client as well, similar sort of evolution there as well. And if you are a service provider, the ability to manage it centrally with your service provider console as well, nicely and securely from version 9 when that comes later in the year. So again, just overlaying this, so forgive me, but just coming with a few print screens now. So again, just pre-configured, just enough OS, flexible design. Again, still 100% software defined with hardware agnostic, so you can put this on any appliance to your flavour. We have something called a Veeam Ready website where you can go and check who the current supported providers are. I believe Scality are on the call today, so they're doing a good campaign with us at the minute, where we're sort of putting this hardened repository on with that as well. So you can reach out if you need any more information on that. Then you've got the pre-hardened piece as well. So the idea is to streamline and standardize the components and make sure you've got the deployment easy to go and put in MFA from the get-go. Again, as you would have seen, Security Compliance Analyzer flags this up to say, configure it, configure it, configure it. But it doesn't necessarily mean you are configuring it, or you might have some environments where they're stagnated and they've just not added those extra security layers into there, just organically, essentially. But it's just always good to get that sort of nailed off as well. And how it looks, you'll see it here. So you can see the host management console and you can see what's required from the get-go. You can still sort of do some tweaks as well, because some environments need to sort of have some access and control over that. But we just want to make sure it's hardened from the get-go and have a stake in the ground. And again, just predictable zero trust pieces in there. So how that looks is just a little bit of a nice slick dashboard, and the ability to have ease of view of that sort of a deployment as well. Just to note, the fit client isn't going anywhere and will be compatible going forward as well. But just to wrap that up, what does all this even mean? So we're bringing all this good stuff, and it's like, well, so what? You know, it's an appliance, whoop-de-doo. But it means quicker onboarding. You can deploy and reduce your sort of deployment times. You can reduce your cost as well. So today, some of the overhead is to have a Windows-bound OS and have a SQL database. Going forward, you can just run it straight from that Linux appliance itself, and also having Postgres as the sort of the database of choice. Again, software defined, so you can run it on a platform of your choice. So that's nice to have it as a pre-built sort of rollout to sort of meet your business requirements. And then having it pre-hardened just means it reduces that attack vector. Means people, it's likely to be more secure and so on. And the key one is the security updates again, as I mentioned earlier on. So that takes the burden away from you guys having to schedule it, and you'll just have it in the sort of Veeam console, and you can control that as well by making sure that those backups don't get interrupted, and it'll quiesce the jobs, and you can schedule it accordingly to meet your business again. The predictable piece is multiple layers as well for approval, so you can't just change things willy-nilly. A bit like the 4eyes approval, you'll have to have multiple layers, again, just to make sure you abide to that zero trust standards as well. Little taste of how this looks then. You're going to have this cool, fresh dashboard here with a bit of an overview. And the idea is that we're not rewriting it so you have to go and have a training course to learn how to use Veeam Backup or Replication. It's taking it back to that simplistic, all ready to use, intuitive sort of dashboard that you'll be familiar with, but just with a nice new fancy skin on top. You'll also have the cool dark mode, which seems to get a cheer from most techies. That'll be a very welcomed new feature. From a management server point of view, again, you'll be able to see these and you'll be able to have your mount servers now on Linux and all sort of managed from the VBR appliance itself. So a nice, again, cool little function has been long awaited. And again, you can drill down into your backup jobs and see. So it's not too different to what you've seen in the past, but it's with a nice new skin. So yeah, just to labour it a little bit more, what you'll have is up there, the top left-hand corner is a hamburger, if you will, with the global exclusions. But all of this is just to still look with a nice fresh UI. You can go and build jobs as you've done in the past. And if you can see, it doesn't look too dissimilar to your current green banner that you'll be familiar with today. So hopefully users will find that quite useful. And again, just to label a dark mode, just because we love that, it's finally in there now as well. From an RBAC point of view, you can define roles and you can select certain roles as well, but also select the data source and the scope. So you can limit it down to source and scope. You can select the repository as well. So you can sort of give roles and access controls to certain repository levels, as well as sort of restore permissions. So you can say, I only want you to be able to restore at certain points as well. So really giving you that sort of granular control on that. So cool. Just going to whistle stop tour again a little bit more. So from a Veeam Backup and Replication 13 point of view, you're probably thinking, what deployment options are there today? I thought I'd compile this nice little table, so subject to change. So first off is the V13 software appliance, which we touched on. There's no upgrade path from existing sort of VBR platforms to that. So it's a net new build because it's on Linux. That will have the deployment option of an ISO or an OVA, and it will come with automatic security updates. On the flip side, if you are running Veeam today, which hopefully you are, you will have the ability to upgrade your current VBR, say V12.3 to V13, and that'll be fully supporting. That will be, it'll essentially support the Windows piece as well. And then just touching on the infrastructure components piece, again, just on the left-hand side there, you'll see it's pre-baked. It's all out of the box from Veeam. You'll have it pre-configured PostgreSQL with the just enough OS in there, and it will all be hardened from day one. The key thing to note here, if you haven't spotted it already, is the high availability, which has been the long-awaited feature. So that will only be supported on the software appliance Linux edition. So if you want high availability, it won't be supported on the Windows edition, essentially. So so just watch this space if that's a requirement for you guys. I have touched on some licensing pieces here, but again, appreciate that's for service providers in the rental terms. But yeah, so service providers will now be able to do Veeam Data Platform on rental, and the existing world will still support the traditional rental with the standard Enterprise and Enterprise Plus. So just to be mindful of. So the high availability feature that we mentioned there will be essentially a 4i generated. So you won't be able to just invoke DR. You have to make sure it's sort of pre-approved from two admins in the environment. It'll be in an active passive configuration, but essentially give you protection of your sort of platform, and it's exclusive to the Linux piece as well. How that looks, you'll dial into a top line IP address. You'll specify, and then you'll see whether it's available or not as well. So you'll be able to see high available clusters available and dial in whether it's up or down. Just to touch on the V13, because you can't talk about V13 without Veeam being baked in as well. How am I doing for time, guys? Just checking in. I think I'm fine on us. I think I'm 18.
Yeah, you're okay, Adrian.
No, perfect. Cool. So Veeam 1. There's a new user experience, again, as I mentioned, with the HTML5 and the web dashboard. But this is all about being more dynamic, allowing you. So if you're familiar with Veeam 1 today, it's fairly monolithic. You've got 150 plus reports, and all of them are fantastic reports, but no single report does everything that everybody wants. So, for example, we bake in a new feature like immutability, or we add scale out backup repository to archived tier or whatnot. And every time there's always something one of the reports is missing, and you have to go and try and create a custom one. With the new dashboard, you'll be able to dynamically create what you need and when you want it. And then with the export, you'll have it nice and slick into your PDFs as well. As much as well with a unified search across all the dashboards. So whatever you search will stripe across all the different sort of database in the Veeam One platform as well. Rapid reporting, so an upgrade. So we'll be using Postgres. I'll see Michael's question in a minute. So it will be using Postgres in the back end for the reporting, for that rapid reporting capability, and you'll be able to do granular filtering from the reporting point of view as well. So you can see the licensing in there, you can see the proxies and so on as well, with a nice clean CSV or a PDF view as well. So if you're used to compiling reports in Veeam One today, usually the compiling of it takes a bit of time, and then when you get it in a PDF, sometimes it's nice and aligned, and sometimes it's not. Going forward, that's going to be massively fast, a lot faster with this Postgres SQL instance that's running in the back end, and you'll have that a lot more dynamic. And on that will be why it's scalable and secure is we're going to an agent-based collection, a bit like what Service Provider Console does as well. So rather than Veeam One trying to do the grunt work and sort of compile those as well as actually still collecting those metrics, we're going to offload that to the actual agents themselves and then bring that intelligence back, and then Veeam One can actually focus on doing that nice slick dynamic reporting for you to give you that better user experience essentially. Should I press next there so you can see how that looks. And with that, that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour on the V13 for VBR with the Veeam software appliance, as well as a little taste into Veeam One. Any questions?
Thanks for that, Adrian. I think Michael was just put in the chat around looks like the legacy licensing socket-based doesn't work on the Linux appliance.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that going into new worlds, you would call it, that you're on the Veeam data platform from both rental and from a subscription point of view. Dare I say, Socket's been trying to be sunsetted for a long time, and it just seems to keep coming back. So I'm not surprised as well with that one. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I think it's probably. I think the track Veeam are taking with the Linux appliance and the HTML5, Adrian, as well, is similar to VMware. So
yeah, exactly.
I think version 13, if I'm right in saying, won't be fully feature rich with HTML5.
Correct. Yeah. So they're going to bring it out in different editions. So it's going to be a 13.0, 13.1. And drip it out, and with that there'll be different migrations that come along as well, because that's the number one question I get: how do I get from my VBR Windows into VBR Linux today? And it's like, well, there isn't one well defined just yet, but it will come out. But as it stands today, if you want to go Linux flavor, go net new build. As and when the Windows edition comes out, you'll be able to upgrade in place like you do today anyway with VBR. But then there will be an influx point where you will want to shift that over to Linux to get that net benefit outcome of high availability and so on as well. But yeah, just watch this space and you'll see it all come out in the wash.
Perfect. Thanks, Adrian. Are there any other questions? Just type them in the chat or use the Q&A function, and we can always circle back. But I mean, in the meantime, I think my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Jim Jones.
Hey, how's it going, Mark? Yeah, so thank you all for having me. Let me switch on my slides here real quick. So yeah, as Mark said, my name is Jim Jones. I'm a product architect here at 1111. I work side by side with Ian every single day. So my slides look a little funky because this is a scaled down, what I call lightning edition of a talk that I gave a couple times at Veeam One this year. There is a lot more content here if you guys are working and using VB365. So I do recommend you grab a copy of that link, and I'll put it in the chat after the talk so you can see the other information. So we're going to jump right into it if that works for everybody. So this is going to be deep nerd fun. If I can get a raised hands from people in the session, if you're using VB365 today, and maybe having scalability issues. So I gave a version of this talk for V7 as well with Falco Banashak, and there's a lot that's changing for VB365 V8, and then again also for 8.1. Thing that I heard a couple weeks ago is it's kind of up in the air if there's ever going to be a V9. It's not that VDC is coming for your business, it's that they're going to a more Google-like release cycle where it's going to be 8.1, 8.1.2, 8.1.3, 8.2. You know what I mean? The evolution will be in the dots, as opposed to every year there's going to be a V8, a V9, a V10, etc. With V8, and as we think about this for doing it at scale, and by scale I mean anytime you're having to deal with, let's say, 5,000, or even, you're dealing with the thousands of users, but 5,000 is really the cutoff we always want to think about. And then if we're talking about hundreds of terabytes of data, so let's say you might have some SharePoint sites that are ginormous, or do what everybody else is doing, unfortunately, and doing a document management system that uses SharePoint as a storage. When we do those things, we have to think about it at scale. We always want to scale out the architecture fully. And we're going to talk about some of the components that go into VB365 V8 here in a second. And when possible, use Linux. So, the bad old days, Adrian Hurt mentioned it with VBR, with VB365, we're getting into a world where Veeam's transitioning a lot of the infrastructure to run on Linux first. Today, that controller and the API server still has to be Windows, but your proxies can be Linux now, which is an amazing thing. And then your repositories don't actually have to exist. They can just be object storage. Okay. I am a massive advocate for this type of service to make it cloud always. The way I always put it to customers that come to 1111 and want to talk about, should I be doing my own VB365 or should I use a service? Is you spent all of the time and effort to move those file servers, to move those Exchange servers, to move all those things that make up M365 out to the cloud. Why in goodness name would you then want to turn around and bring it back on-prem just in the form of backups? Okay, so just one way or another, keep it in the cloud. And then if you're thinking about growth, if you're a company that's M&A focused, if you're a company that's organically growing a whole lot, you need to kind of start thinking with growth. So just like when you drive, you don't look right in front of the car, you look 20 or 30 feet in front of the car when you're driving it. Be looking at that forward and what that potentially can be, and be prepared to scale up. By that, I mean put more CPU, more RAM, more storage onto certain storage servers, and then also being able to scale out. So being able to leverage additional proxies is the biggest things, or maybe even additional components. There's also a component to, ooh, my slides got out of order. So forgive me. So as we think about what does the database look like? So one of the slides that you're going to see me see here in a second, Adrian also talked about Postgres. Veeam loves them some Postgres these days. Okay, it is a great database system, but the discussion of how to do VB365 at the edge when we're getting into bigger environments is frankly a very fluid conversation right now. And a lot of that has to do with how do you weigh the needs to be performant with that object storage platform versus the database server that is now going to be the underlay of VB365. And essentially what it comes down to is when we are talking about hyperscaler object storage services, and I'm running the compute in public cloud, whether that be AWS, Azure, GCP, etc. You want to defer to having less object storage repositories because that'll be easier on the databases. Versus if I'm running some version of a hardware appliance object storage, Scality's here, so we'll talk about them, others that are around as well. What we may want to do is defer to having more buckets so it's easier on the database system that underlies that object storage service, and make the Postgres that's needed for VB365 a little more under load. And finally, as a general purpose kind of thing when we do scalability. When we think about our job structure and our repository structure, even if you split it no other way, always address Exchange and SharePoint components separately. So Exchange is going to be just your mailbox, and then SharePoint underlays not only SharePoint, but OneDrive and Teams as well. If nothing else, separate those into two separate jobs within for your organization, and then put them into different repositories. Okay? Gone too far. So when we think about, so how are we going to get started with these things, and where can I get more help, and where can I get the latest information? As I mentioned, the scalability and the performance of VB365 is still very much so in flight, and it's a very fluid conversation. We're on V8.1.1 right now. Today is Tuesday. 8.1.2 may well release today, or maybe in the next little bit. There's a lot of patch fixes that come to that. This KB 4711 is the consolidated release notes for all variants of 8.1. So track that. There is an RSS feed that you can track that'll let you know when new versions come. When I think of where can I find the latest documentation and guidance today for how do I set this thing up if I'm going to do it at big scale? And keep in mind, I'm at 1111, we're the biggest non-VDC provider that's out there. And so when we say scale, it's our starting place for our environments is somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 users. So we really, push the edges on a lot of these things. Believe it or not, as we speak today, the Service Provider Best Practices Guide is actually the most up-to-date information for how to do this in a large scale. So check out that link. But the Best Practices Guide, which is what I normally point to for VB365, will be getting updated soon. So check that out as well, or keep an eye on it. So as we mentioned, it's a scaled out architecture now. So before we had a VB365 server that was all running on Windows. Within that Windows server, we had no explicit database service. You had JetDB files that were there, one for the configuration and one per repository that worked as an object storage cache. And then those databases lived on the individual proxies. Okay. Starting with V8, we have consolidated that into a Postgres server. If you're going to do this at scale, that Postgres server should always be external to the VB365 controller itself, and preferably always Linux, because Postgres is natively a Linux application that's since been ported to Windows. Okay. When it comes to hardware, up to 50 proxies, which used to be the top level for V7 and before, as a recommendation, 16 CPUs, 64 gig of RAM, which is pretty much in line with what we talked about for a large controller in VB365 V7. With V8, this guidance again is getting very fluid. This originally said 150 proxies. Now I'm hearing the guidance is 100 proxies should be the top level for the number that you have within a single environment. Scale that up some more to 24 CPU and 96 gig of RAM. You'll notice that these are all numbers that will well port to cloud-based instance sizes. But really, what is your defining? We represent the size of an environment and the number of proxies. But really, the defining metric when it comes to Postgres sizing is the repositories. Put this in the back of your brain and keep it there, especially if you're looking to do an upgrade. But with the way that V8 is going to work with your existing object storage repositories, or really any repositories, is that metadata cache that used to be a JetDB file is going to come into that Postgres server and be its own database all by itself. So the more repositories you have, the more under load that Postgres SQL server is going to be. Okay, so again, we come back to less repositories can sometimes be better, especially when we have quote unquote infinite scale of the cloud available to us. Okay, when you go to do your upgrade or you do a clean install, there is a commandlet that is automatically run for you when you do the first install. It's a set VBO pSQL database limits. I do recommend that with each version, it's what that does is it tweaks the configuration file for Postgres through a SQL call and makes the Postgres more tuned to VB365. Run this after each time you do an upgrade, and if you can, build it into your upgrade procedures. So if you're doing automated things with Ansible or whatever, just put calling that command into your playbooks, and that will help a lot. For that same reason, there is a variant of that command that's available for VBR as well. The general guidance is do not, under any circumstances, asterisks, share the Postgres server between VBR and VB365. Okay. And finally, here's a new thing, and this one is on the front end, and there's not a whole lot of guidance, but it's what a lot of us that are thinking about this at scale, we're very much so talking about, is this open source project called PG Bouncer. And effectively, it's a rate limiter for the connections coming into that pSQL server. And look for my website, Coy.info. At some point in the near future, I'll have a write-up on how do you use this with Postgres for VB365. But be doing your own investigation as well. All right, so the next component that is brand shiny and new, and this is a thing that I never heard of until VB365 V8 came to be, is something called NATS. Okay, so it's nats.io is where you would go to potentially download this software. And what this is a message queuing system, much like Redis or RabbitMQ. And effectively, what happens with the proxy pools that we're going to talk about here in a second, where the repositories and the jobs can be dynamically allocated. This is your mailman that's sitting at the post office sorting letters into all the mailboxes to make sure the tasks get done correctly. So every time there's a thing to back up from the job, it gets assigned to a proxy, to a repository, and NATS is who's communicating that. Again, we always want this NAT server to be external from the VB365 controller itself. It can run on Linux, and it should run on Linux. Hardware-wise, use the standard old 8 CPU, 32 gig of RAM that we've used for all things VB365 for forever. There's all kinds of different ways to deploy this, up to and including clustering. One thing that we're really kind of consolidating on is only do a single node and then well monitor that single node to make sure that the queue is still functioning and flowing correctly. While it'd be nice to have the clustered capability for high availability in case one of the nodes goes down, it really, really, really takes a big performance hit when you do clustering. So just do a single node, monitor your queues, make sure they keep running. And if they stop, simply all you have to do is restart the service or restart the server. This is not like apt install NATS or anything like that. There are ways to get this to run as a service and stuff like that, but it's not an easy deployment. What I did work out was a really slick way to install this via the containerization platform Podman, to where it encompasses all the Veeam best practices for NAT as well. And if you go to that link or go to Cooley.info, there's a whole how-to for how to deploy it that way. And upgrades are simply a matter of just restarting the service, and it's pretty slick. So that's NATS. So talking about proxies, we talked about, we've been dealing with proxies for forever. The biggest thing that I see a lot of people do is they put their compute either on-prem or they'll put them in one cloud, and then they'll put their object storage somewhere far, far away. It may be an object storage service that sounds like a condiment for your sushi. In that situation, what I will always advocate for is keep all of your components for your VB365 environment close, meaning have the compute, the controller, the things that the controller needs now, Postgres and NATS, your proxies, and then your object storage, all within one, like, quote unquote cloud, if you will. Okay. With proxies, brand new for V8, and then again with V8.1 is Linux support. With V8, we can only run the last versions of Ubuntu and RHEL. Now with 8.1, they've ported the .NET to the open source variant of it. So now you can run that on the latest and greatest builds of Ubuntu and Red Hat. When it comes to what type of instances you want, as we're going to run this in the cloud because we want to be cloud always, for Azure, use DRF type instances. For AWS, always use the M types. And then as a general rule of thumb for pretty much anything VB365, but especially for the proxies, as you think about that scale up, as we're going to scale up the CPU and scale up the RAM, always maintain a 1:4 CPU to RAM ratio, okay? We've been talking about 8x32 for VB365 for forever, but be cognizant now that we can support more proxies, you may find yourself in a situation where having four 4x16 proxies are more efficient and more cost effective than just two 8x32s. Okay, so be aware of that. And then there's proxies. Now with V8, we're going to put them in a pool. And this is the most exciting thing that we got going on here, guys. So again, we talk about dynamically allocating the jobs, spreading it out, doing scale out architecture for how we're going to back up all of these users, organizations, SharePoint sites, etc. Okay. Again, very fluid as to the guidance for this. When I gave this talk, 2 months ago at Veeam, the guidance that we were working on was you could do in a single environment up to 3 pools with 50 proxies per pool, which is more than 100 proxies. Okay. So we still want to lower that. We want to stay below 100 proxies now. You can still do up to 3 pools if you'd like, but you definitely do not want to go above 50 proxies or 50 proxies per pool. Okay, and the reason for that is once you go over 50, there's code in VBO V8 that if you have more than 50 proxies in a pool, one of those compute modules, all it's going to do is manage the other ones. So now you're just throwing away compute that you're probably paying for. Okay, and then again, another fluid statement right now is a couple months ago, we were recommending do 1 pool for onboarding orgs. This is still a thing that should be there, but it may become mitigated as further releases come out. But there's a prioritization as to how resources get assigned based on the type of job. Okay, so restore operations always get resources first. So if you have 20 proxies and you have 20 restore operations going on, those things are probably going to choke out everything else. Okay, it's probably not likely. Once you get past restore operations, you're going to get into the incrementals, the daily updates to jobs and organizations you've already onboarded. Okay, those come second. The very bottom of the list is your new seeding jobs. So when you create a job for the first time, it gets the lowest level of priority for the resources. So what you can do is you can start with having you can dedicate 1 pool that all it is for onboarding brand new jobs and and filling up the repository so they don't have to compete for those resources. And then once they're done, you can migrate that repository from one proxy pool to another and then put it into the common usage. Okay. Finally, let's talk about backup job optimization. And like I said, in V7, this was a lot of what we really talked about, okay? With V8, the conversation's a lot different, and there's use cases for scaling a lot of this down. As we think about it, we need to think about any kind of try to flip your brain, and instead of thinking it in terms of jobs, think of it in terms of policies. So if I've got a single organization that has, 10, 20,000 users in it. I may have one policy that my execs have to have 7 days of retention, have immutability on the first copy, which by the way, we can now have immutability on that first copy, and then a longer immutability on the secondary copy. Okay, so I will come down, I'll split that executive dynamic group from M365 into the mailboxes will go into one job, OneDrive will go into another, and then each of those will go into their own bucket-based repositories. Okay, then we still want to maintain somewhere in the neighborhood of no more than 5,000 to 7,000 users in a given job. Okay, there's conjecture that we can scale that up further right now, but from a general practice, all of the jobs are never going to complete. I still recommend keeping that at around 5,000 personally as a top level, because then that limits your failure domain. So if you've got 20 jobs because you've got 100,000 person org, you may get 90,000 of those users work just fine, but you have one guy that's got all his email from 1977 still flowing into this one thing, and it takes forever and ever and ever, or you have a giant OneDrive. You can limit your radius, and those 90,000 users can back up just fine while this one's still trying to truck along, if that makes sense. And then finally, think of a policy and always deal with SharePoint sites separately, especially large ones. So if you have a document management site or something that's supersized, put it in its own job and just let it do its own thing. And then for anything that's small, potentially you could do a catch-all sites and just manually add all those. But in each of these situations, I still like that one job to one repository relationship until we get real good, definite guidance from Veeam that we should change that. And then finally, if all of this is super complicated, and like I said, you guys only got about a third of the content that's available in this, if it's super complicated, don't do it yourself. There are options that are out there. There's a whole host of service providers that are available in the marketplace that can give you very tailored solutions for this software. And then there's also now Veeam Data Cloud for M365 that gets you the same kind of place directly from Veeam. And with that, I want to say thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Mark and Ian.
Thanks for that, Jim. Really good session. I mean, certainly the proxy pools has been a bit of a game changer in terms of being able to scale 365.
Yep. Yeah, and hopefully I didn't butcher the time too much. If there's any questions, I haven't looked at the chat or anything.
I've not seen any questions come through. Nope. Nothing in the Q&A either.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, you feel free to speak up now. I don't know where we're at on time, or you can always find me at cooley.info, and that's got all my social media. Feel free to reach out after the fact.
Brilliant. Nice one. Well, thank you very much for that, Jim. We appreciate you presenting and taking the time out today.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
We've got Thomas from Scality. I won't steal Thomas's thunder and kind of explain, but he's going to give an overview of something that is quite exciting, I think, that is coming in version 13. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. Thomas, are you okay to start presenting?
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Should be able to see it properly, right?
Yeah, we can see that fine.
Great. So move to slideshow. Okay, let's go. Hi, everyone. So I'm Thomas Daniel. I'm working at Scality. I'm working in the product management team since 8 years now, and I'm the senior product director for Artesca. So you will learn about that, but at Scality, we have two products, Ring and Artesca, and I'm the one taking care of Artesca, about its strategy, about the work we are doing with engineering, support, sales, and marketing. And I'm having a lot of interactions also with partners and end users to better understand the way they are using our products. So I just wanted to give a short introduction about Scality. Scality is a software editor. We are doing distributed storage solutions. And our products are being used since more than 15 years now. And when we look at how much our products are used, we can share a few numbers around that. Like we accumulate around 10 exabytes of data being stored on different platforms. It corresponds to around 6 trillion of objects. Just to give an indication, those 6 trillion of objects represent around 1.5 to 2% of what AWS is storing today in their cloud environments. Those applications are being used by thousands. I mean, our softwares are being used and integrated by thousands of different applications. Some are really mission critical, and those applications are being hosted by the biggest bank or service providers. So yeah, we have, I would say, an experience in storing critical data for large enterprise customers since more than 15 years. Today we have two products. The Ring, which is super flexible, super scalable, and we use it especially for large enterprise and service providers because it can adapt nicely to whatever evolution our customers would like to put in place. But all this experience, all this expertise I was talking about just before, we also made it available within a much simpler product, which is Artesca, which corresponds to what small and medium businesses need, something which is very simple to deploy, very simple to operate, and which doesn't need to have a specific expertise in terms of Linux or in terms of your product. And that's what we started like 3 years ago now with Artesca. And this Artesca is like Veeam 13, a software appliance product. It embeds the operating system. It is already it's pre-hardened, pre-configured, so you don't have to bother with anything complicated. It comes ready to use. And more than an object storage, Artesca is the best storage solution for specific applications. And we, since the beginning, focused on backup application, and more specifically, we focused on integrating with Veeam backup application. So you will find in Artesca more than object storage capabilities. Obviously, it's fully S3 compatible, but more than that, we bring some unique features you will not find anywhere else to make the integration with Veeam the best possible integration ever. So if we take a few numbers about Artesca, is being deployed today at many different customers, accumulating around 200 petabytes of data, being hosted through thousands of different servers. And what is really key to understand here is 75 to 80% of the applications being integrated with Artesca are with Veeam. So it's either Veeam backup and replication for the majority of them, or Veeam backup for Office 365. And those solutions, this product, Artesca, is being resold and deployed and operated by a community of partners, of what we call the Scality certified architects. We have thousands of them being trained and being certified today. And the solution is being deployed on, it's a software-defined type of solution, so we can deploy it on whatever x86 hardware we have, and we support a lot of them. So 1 year ago, and I'd like to thank Veeam for that, we started to work with Veeam on this concept of having an Artesca and Veeam unified software appliance, because Veeam was in the motion of working and delivering this Veeam 13 software appliance. So it was the right time to think about how we could merge our two products into a simple and unified solution that will also meet the need of small and medium businesses or enterprise businesses, in the sense that it would not need to have different hardware, different infrastructures to deploy the two different systems. So we worked on that. We had a lot of meetings with the product management team. We defined several options in terms of architecture, technical architectures, and deployment. And a few months back, we converged on what should be the solution. And now we are in the very last mile of making this solution available for the market. So let me describe it quickly. So we have your production environment that you want to protect. So it can be virtual machines, it can be SAN, it can be NAS, or individual servers. This production environment is being backed up by your Veeam infrastructure. So the Veeam can be deployed either on the production ESXi, if we are talking about virtualized environment, but it can also be a dedicated server. And then we have our storage solution next to it, Artesca, which is fully hardened, running as microservices, container services within an Artesca Kubernetes, which we embed in our system. And through the standard AWS S3 APIs, we are storing the backup on Artesca. So with the Artesca Unified Software Appliance, we are able to deploy the Veeam virtual machine directly within Artesca through a new component that we embed, which is named KubeVirt. So KubeVirt is just a virtualization engine, the same way you have VMware or Hyper-V or whatever. It's a virtualization engine running on top of our Kubernetes environment. So on top of which we can deploy whatever VM to run the specific Veeam component. So as I was saying at the beginning, we were focusing on Veeam 13, and that's the architecture we agree on with Veeam product management. But at the time we decided on this architecture, we said, but actually we could deploy whatever VM in this new virtualization engine. So why not starting with Veeam 12? We could even think about Veeam backup for Office 365. I mean, a lot of ideas started to fly over there, but we decided at least to start with Veeam 12. And at the time Veeam 13 will be ready, this specific architecture will also work out of the box for Veeam 13. So it's not only a deployment thing, it's also we want to provide as part of this unified software appliance a new user experience. And we are working on a single dashboard, a single pane of glass. So the idea is not to reproduce all the great dashboarding that will be available through Veeam 13 or through Veeam 1. It's just to provide the key metrics, the key indicators next to the key storage indicator into a single pane of glass, into a single dashboard. So you can see in green the different zones where we're going to display Artesca metrics. So we're going to talk about storage, how much storage we are consuming on the platform, how the storage is growing over time, what is the health of the different volumes of the different nodes and everything, what is the throughput in terms of performance. We're going to collect through the Veeam Backup and Replication API specific metrics from Veeam. What are the jobs, their status, how much time it took to run it last night. We are also capable of running the Show Backup Light functionality. So we want to get some status about this run in this dashboard. And last thing is also we can and we will build some, I would say, a solution type of metrics where we aggregate both Veeam and Artesca metrics into a single pane. So it's a way to enrich the data and provide much more meaningful information for the end user. So again, all these things is made available by collecting the data from the Veeam Backup and Replication API that is running within the Artesca plus Veeam Unified Software Appliance. When we talk about supported architecture, so we have a very simple architecture where we have like a single node on which we can back up the production environment. So on this single node, as a reminder, I mean, I didn't say it at the beginning, but the virtual machine will run Veeam Backup and Replication server, obviously, and the console, also the gateway and the Veeam Backup and Replication proxy. Those gateway and proxy, they can be deployed outside of the appliance. That's also possible. And we can integrate this appliance with a Veeam 1, which is also running outside of the appliance. So obviously, this is not the best secure type of architecture, and you want to have a second copy of your backup. So that's obviously something you can do by configuring a secondary copy of the backup to typically the Veeam Data Cloud service. You can do it within the configuration of the Veeam Backup and Replication, which is running in the appliance. We can also do some type of disaster recovery architecture where we have one Artesca plus Veeam appliance running on the production site and one other Artesca plus Veeam appliance running on the secondary site, which is going to host a secondary copy of the backup, but also it's going to host the Veeam configuration from the master site. So this way, we can very easily hand over from master site to secondary site in just a few minutes by reinstancing the Veeam backup and replication, which is in standby, reusing its configuration, which is backed on the appliance. In terms of security, so that's where we're going to make also some improvement, because if you take a standard RTSCA, obviously it comes already with a lot of security benefits, such as the secured S3 APIs that also provide you with immutability with the object-locked APIs. Also, the traffic is being encrypted, obviously, between the VBR proxies and RTSCA. We can easily configure the certificates the way you want. RTSCA comes with default firewalling roles. We have multi-factor authentication activated out of the box, and the operating system on which all of this is running is hardened in factory, so there is no way to hack it. But with the appliance, we bring additional things, such as the S3 endpoints now doesn't need to be exposed to the outside, because it only needs to be exposed to the VBR proxy that can run within the appliance. So by default, the S3 endpoint is only exposed internally to the appliance and not exposed to the outside. So it reduces the surface of threats. If you were to deploy the VBR proxy outside, but then we would have to expose the S3 endpoint to the outside. But at least in default deployment, you don't need. You don't need to have a DNS resolution of your S3 endpoint, because it's only resolved locally. DNS is often being used by the hackers to start hacking your system, but here you don't need this. The Windows virtual machine is secured through our RTSCA firewall. So in our RTSCA firewall, it's pre-deployed with all the different rules you need in order to protect this virtual machine. And we don't need to have the remote desktop client to access the virtual machine. We also can access it directly through VNC on demand when we need. In terms of performance and certification, so we did a lot of performance tests comparing the performance we were having running a standard architecture with RTSCA and Veeam being deployed on different machines, and running the unified architecture where RTSCA and Veeam are running on the same machine. And with some optimization, we ended up having the same performance. So we are talking about 2 gigabytes per second for ingesting that data or restoring data. And now we are we're going to finalize the Veeam certification this week. So we're going to have the Veeam ready repository and the Veeam object repository just in a few days from now as we are finalizing it. So this software-defined appliance or software unified appliance can be deployed on any type of hardware, but we wanted also to bring simplicity here. So we defined, I would say, t-shirt sizing type of configuration that you can use to order some hardware from the different vendors. So we have 7 t-shirt sizing, which helps you to protect and to back up data from 10 terabyte source data up to 220 terabyte source data. So this corresponds to around 1,000 VMs if you are backupping VMs. In terms of repository data, it goes from 20 terabyte to 440 terabyte. So we used the Veeam sizer in order to define those metrics, those information. So taking in account what you see on the slide, the 5 years forecast, the 14 days retention, the immutability activated, the fact that there is a 5% daily change rate, 5% growth, and the compression ratio about 50%. So great choice of functionalities. It works on one node for now, so it's a great product, especially for small businesses or enterprise branch offices. The cost of those servers is very limited because we reduce as possible the RAM, CPU, and SSD resources. So typically, those servers, you can get it from 6K to 20, 25K, depending on the vendors. And we have it from all the main vendors such as HPE, Supermicro, Lenovo, and Dell. So typically, if you want to get such configuration, it's super simple. You can go on the Scality Sizer, and from the Scality Sizer, you can get those configurations from the different vendors and have the full bill of material you need to order to your distributor. So as you can see here, we also provide configuration with 4 drives and in the format of a tower. So we wanted to be able to address branch offices which do not necessarily have data center. So this is what we have with those type of configuration. And obviously you can use 2U system with 24 drives to have up to 440 terabytes. So this solution is also available for our partners, for our Veeam Cloud, for the Veeam Cloud and service providers who can deploy this solution on-prem for their customers. So this is something that integrates with our pay-as-you-go model and our Maestro applications, which can aggregate all the different deployments into a single view so that the Veeam Cloud and service provider, they can easily provide managed services to their customers. So typically manage the licenses, get the usage, trigger some upgrades remotely. So all of these can be done as managed services by our partners for you and customers. Yeah, so just as a recap, in terms of value proposition of this unified software appliance, first, we increase security. The traffic is much more secure. We have automatic firewalling. The performances are the same as if you were deploying systems on different hardware. But the good thing is now that it is deployed on the storage appliance, it cannot impact the performance of the production environment. It's a simple deployment where everything is pre-configured. You're going to see that in a few seconds. We can run the Shore Backup Lite functionality on the appliance. It is size 4. In terms of ease of use, you will have this single pane of glass, and I will show you the Veeam Assistant that make the configuration super simple. In terms of cost, obviously, because you have only one server, you're going to have benefits in terms of how much you pay for the full infrastructure. And as a partners, you may also benefit from this solution if you want to deploy it and provide managed services for your customers. So let's go for the installation. Before I go to the installation, maybe if there are some questions, I'm happy to take some before I move forward. There is no question. Okay. So if we talk about the Veeam 13 software appliance, so the Veeam 13 software appliance, the way we would deploy this unified software appliance is first by deploying Artesca, the same way we are deploying it today. So we deploy the Artesca software appliance, which contains the operating system and the software all together. Then we would upload the Veeam Backup and Replication ISO, which also contains another Linux operating system. And then we would use our tooling in order to deploy this VBR ISO within our virtualization engine. What I mean by that is you don't need to have any expertise in terms of what is KubeVirt, how it's working, because we are providing the tooling on top of that to make it very simple to deploy in one click. Now we are not, Veeam 13 is about to be ready, but is not yet ready. So we started to work on this first iteration with Veeam 12. So it's just a bit more complicated because Veeam 12 is using Windows. So I'm just going to share a video. I'm going to comment it live. So I need to remove the sound. So when we talk about deploying the unified software appliance with Windows, first we're going to install Artesca. So the same way I was just saying before. Then we're going to upload the Windows ISO to the appliance. We're going to use our tooling to automatically deploy and configure this Windows ISO. And once the Windows ISO is deployed, we will connect to the Windows ISO, to the Windows virtual machine. We will upload Veeam Backup and Replication version 12, and we will install it. So more or less the same way you are doing it today. So installing Artesca, it's about preparing the hardware, installing the operating system. Then we generate an installation configuration. We do the pre-check and we install this. So all of this is fully documented. Our partners are trained. So the only one thing to know is when we generate the configuration, we need to use this -- enable Artesca plus option so that it will deploy everything you need to have the unified software appliance. Then we choose the architecture, we choose on which IP we want the system to be, the management interface to be exposed. And at the very end, we will be asked to choose on which interface we want the virtual machine to be exposed. So on which which interface we want to use to have the traffic from the production environment to the RTSCA system. So once this configuration is generated, we just have to launch the installation, again, the same way we do it usually. So it takes 45 minutes for one node to deploy everything. And at the very end of the installation, we will reconfigure this interface in bridge mode so that we have one dedicated IP for RTSCA and one dedicated IP for Veeam. So at this time, you may lose the connection, but you just have to press a key, continue, and reconnect. The installation is done at this step. The RTSCA is fully deployed with two IPs for everything. So as a recap, just use the -- enable RTSCA plus option. We will have one IP for the virtual machine, one IP for RTSCA, all using the same network interface, which is configured in bridge mode. Yeah, then you have to get the Windows virtual machine, the Windows ISO to the RTSCA system. So you can download it from the official Windows site. We do support Windows Server 2022 or Windows Server 2025. And yeah, you should not use any other version to do so. And once the ISO is downloaded on the RTSCA server, we can use our tooling to automatically create the virtual machine from this ISO. So you will be asked for three different information. What is the path of the ISO? What is the Windows version of the ISO? So again, 2022 or 2025. And what is the IP to allocate to this ISO? So it will take just a few minutes to spawn this virtual machine. And at the end, you will have the credentials to use. So you must know that when we create this virtual machine, it will come already pre-configured with a Veeam partition of 300 gigabytes. The certificate authority is already deployed on the virtual machine. The host file is already updated so that the S3 endpoint will be resolved automatically. The firewall is adjusted and secure to protect the virtual machine. And at this stage, you can delete the Windows ISO from the host because it's not needed anymore. Okay, so once the virtual machine is deployed, now you can connect to it in order to upload the VBR ISO and deploy it the same way you would deploy it when you run Veeam on the SCXI or on a dedicated machine. So here I'm just downloading it on the server from my host. I can run the setup. And here, because everything is configured, the installation, there will be no choice to be made. You just have to click several times on next, and then the installation of Veeam will be done using this specific partition I was talking about of 300 gigabytes. So at the end of the installation, you have Veeam backup and replication being installed on the RTSCA plus Veeam Unified Software Appliance. You can access it through RDP, or you can access it through VNC if you want to disable RDP. Okay, so this is for the installation. I mean, it's a video because running the full installation would take, I don't know, an hour or so we don't have the time for that. But let's do a demo now that everything is installed, how you operate it. So yeah, let's go to the demo. So I have, no, it's not this one. Yeah. So you can see here I'm on RTSCA plus Veeam Unified Software Appliance. The RTSCA IP is on the 14.40, while the virtual machine IP is on 14.242. Okay, that's the virtual machine specific IP I allocated to this virtual machine. So on the one side, I have my RTSCA. I can access it directly from the virtual machine, or I can access it from anywhere else. And the other side, I have the Veeam that has just been deployed. So I want to show you what is going to be the very first user experience when you log to when the appliance has just been deployed. So I'm connecting to the RTSCA plus Veeam Unified Software Appliance to the RTSCA UI. And the first thing I'm asked to do is to start the Veeam Assistant to configure the system for integrating with Veeam Backup and Replication. So I can click on Continue to start the assistant. I need to give an account name. So today it's going to be the Scality account. I need to give a bucket name. So it's going to be VBR Immutable Backups. I'm activating immutability, and I click on continue, and it will create everything I need on the Artesca system. So you don't, as you can see, you don't need to know anything about S3. Everything is pre-configured for you and automatically configured. So here I have the different information I will need to create the repository within Veeam. I even have some screenshots to tell you about an option that we should not use with Artesca, so that you have everything on the screen. You don't need to look for those information. So here from Veeam, I can create a new backup repository. I can choose the object storage, S3 compatible, S3 compatible, and from there I can name my repository, Scality repo. Again, it's a local repository because it's a unified software appliance. In terms of service point, I can just copy the service point from here and paste it here. I can, in terms of credentials, I can add the credentials which are here. They are only available one time, so I must make sure that I copy it from the screen as I see it. Okay, I click on next. I'm going to browse the bucket. So the assistant already created this VBR immutable bucket for me. So I just have to select it. I need to create a folder. So let's name in backups. Okay, I click OK. My bucket being immutable, I need to choose for this option to make sure Veeam stores things in an immutable way. Oh, I forgot to disable the automatic bucket creation, which I don't need in Artesca. So I disable it. I click on next. Next. So as you can see, the endpoint was resolved automatically. The certificate was accepted automatically. I didn't see any warning because, again, all of this is pre-configured when we deploy the virtual machine. So it will take just a few seconds to configure the repository. And I think from there, I'm going to be done. And my repository is here. It appears in integrated repository because we have the Smart Object Storage API also being available in our system. And that's it. And that's all. Everything is configured. You can click on Finish. You can see your Veeam immutable bucket in which Veeam started to populate some information and on which you can start creating jobs and offloading some backups. So that's it for the demo. If you don't have any question, I will come back to my slides. Okay. So what are the next steps? But first, we're going to release our next version, Artesca 4.0.0, which includes the Artesca plus Veeam Unified Software Appliance with Veeam VBR12 on Windows. And this will be available the 4th of July, so just a few days from now. This Unified Software Appliance is fully supported by both Scality and Veeam. And you can start deploying it after the 4th of July if you want, if you need, for starting having all of the best of the backup application and the storage application into a single server. Then, obviously, what is super important for us is also to make it work for VBR 13. So we already have it working for VBR 13 in our lab. It's not different in terms of architecture. It's exactly the same architecture. So the Veeam 13 run the same way. So the deployment will be much more simple because you don't have to do this two-step deployment with Windows deployment and Veeam deployments. It's only a one-step deployment. Also, later on, when the VBR 13 Windows version and when potentially we'll have some migration tooling, we will also make sure that those migration tooling can be run within the appliance. So if you start today with Artesca plus Veeam Unified Software Appliance VBR 12 on Windows, and the day we have the migration tooling, maybe early next year, we will be able to migrate to VBR 13 Linux version. The other thing we want to do is, as it was said at the beginning, VBR 13 will come also with high availability type of functionality. So we're going to work on having this unified software appliance being able to deploy on multiple node architecture and leverage the high availability that will be available from VBR 13. The overview page today it's limited. We have only a very few metrics, so we'll keep working on populating this overview page. And one idea we'd like to add to the unified software appliance is also to automatically create the Veeam backup repository from the assistant I was demonstrating to you, so that you don't even have to copy and paste those credentials keys. You will never see it, and everything will be automatically configured within the unified software appliance. And then you can potentially update the repository that was created and start adding some jobs to it. And that's it. I hope it was clear. And yeah, again, if you have questions, I'm always happy to answer.
Thank you for that, Thomas. Really, really good session. Right. So Adam, if for those not just looking at chat, Adam from Scality just put in that the unified appliance is available today on the Scality partner portal. So if you've got partner portal access, get yourselves over there and start playing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and thank you for reminding it, because that should have been the one news I want to share with you is, yes, we have a preview version that is available today from the partner portal. So if you have access to the partner portal, you can find it very easily on the top right of the landing page. You have two versions available, either a version you can deploy on vSphere, so just for testing, and you have I would say the normal software appliance that you can deploy on real hardware if you have some. If you don't have access to the partner portal, I encourage you to start creating you an account and start working with us also and enjoy this new release.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Thomas. Really appreciate your time and sharing that with us. And now that brings us on to, I mean, probably arguably the best name for a session this year. And Michael.
Thanks
Michael,
for the flowers. Yeah.
Are you okay to start sharing, Michael?
Yes, I'm just trying it. You should see my slides now.
Sorry. Yes, we can. Yes.
Does it work? Okay, perfect. So first of all, thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation to support your virtual summer event for VUG UK. A brief introduction to myself first. I'm a co-founder of my company Idikos here in Germany, in Heidelberg. Also, I'm lead consultant for Veeam for several times here. I have a team of several people that are inside the product very much. I myself do Veeam since 2007, which was fast SCP by the time, the only product available. So I was very familiar with the screenshots that Adrian showed before. Also, I'm a Veeam trainer, so I'm well aware of the fact that the VMCA course is going away, and I'm wondering what the replacement will be like that Mark just talked about. And on top, I'm a Veeam legend. It sounds a bit fishy to say you're a legend in something, but that's how they call it. It's a special special thing you can be when you are active in the forums, in the Veeam forums and in the community. And besides that, I'm VUG leader for the German VUG user group. We are 3 in total, and we just held a German user group event in person, and there's going to be another one later this year. And I've given this presentation on the German VUG already, in German, obviously. Here it's going to be in English. Sorry for my accent and my pitch in English. I hope you can still follow what I'm saying. And it brings me to the first slide, which is the agenda. We're going to talk about RPOs now, and we'll approach it slowly and finally end up with something that maybe most of you don't know that it's possible. I at least was somehow flabbergasted when I first seen that this is possible. So first of all, what's RPO anyways, and how we can achieve minimal RPOs with VBR, so with Veeam Backup and Replication, because that's always our goal, to have the smallest RPO possible. So I call it RPOs in XXS, or t-shirt size. What's an RPO? Most of you will definitely know that. It's even part of the training, the Veeam training, and the exam that you have to do when you want to become a certified engineer here. When an outage happens, what you have to do is recover your data, and the only point you can recover to is obviously the RPO, the recovery point objective, which is the point in time that you did your last backup. Yeah, you cannot recover to anything else than the point you have your last backup. And the further it is away, the larger the gap in data will be. There's another variable here, which I just want to mention, which is the recovery time objective. That's the time it takes from when you detect the outage until the users can work again. It's not only the time of the recovery. On top comes the time to set the system up again and boot it and bring users back online. So it's the total amount of time you need until your users are happy again. So how can we achieve smaller RPOs? So how can we bring the RPOs more close to the outage? There's a trivial approach in Veeam. It's been there since the first version. The first version, most of you might know, is not version 1. Because after fast SCP, the only version I'm aware of is a version 2. This was the first version we sold here in Germany, when Veeam was still a very small company. The trivial approach just means that you bring your scheduling down as much as possible. And there's an option here in the scheduling that you can set the scheduling to continuously, which means that after the snapshot-driven job is finished, another snapshot-driven job is run again, which means in the end that your snapshot will be open all the time. Yeah, you will close it just for some seconds and then open the next snapshot, as these backups, we're talking VM backups here, rely on snapshots heavily. So in general, it's possible, and you can also bring in some time periods during which you want to run the job in that way, so not to stress the system throughout the whole day maybe. There are pros here. It's very easy to implement. It's just a click of a button. You can even have application integration. That means guest processing here, because it's just a regular job. And it's fully embedded in the backup stack. So you can use everything that we like to use with Veeam Backup and Replication. Like, for instance, we can push those backups to an Ateska appliance in an S3 bucket easily. There are cons as well. We need an hypervisor snapshot here, which comes with load to the hypervisor, load to the VM, at least a little bit, because you will see stuns during the time when the snapshot is committed to the VM again. Pro side here is you could combine that with backup from storage snapshot, which is something we will come back to later on during the talk. So this eases the process at least a little bit with the hypervisor snapshot. When you add application integration here, it even adds more load to the VM, so be aware of that. And it's not possible for highly active workloads, so never try this with a large, huge database. It's not the way you should protect your crown jewels with. This is something for a system that is in the third line and still maybe has the need for a very small RPO. We have that actually at certain customers in place because no other possibilities were there, and it's easy to implement. But this is trivial, as I said. The next option, which is also built into Veeam for a certain amount of time already, not from the very beginning, but it came in I would say, version 5, something like that, is log shipping. Log shipping does mean that in addition to the image level backup that we generate, for instance, each and every day, we do create log backups from certain specific databases that are supported by Veeam. And here comes a list of the databases that are supported from inside the product right now. The first product that was included, obviously, was Microsoft SQL Server, but Oracle is also well supported here. And in recent times, they added Postgre and MySQL as well. First, it was included only for the agent backup, but now we can even have that with the VM backups as well. What does it mean? We can in the guest processing options, we can choose for the log shipping parameters. So we can, besides not shipping anything, set up to ship logs, for instance, every 15 minutes, like it is set here. And that means that in addition to the image level backup we do tonight, every 15 minutes, the logs, so the changes to the database itself, will be compressed on the system and shipped to the Veeam server and stored in a special format there, which is the VLB file. It's just a zipped version of the logs, compressed version, and in combination with the image level backup, this allows for a point-in-time recovery, even graphically from the Veeam Explorer. So you can, without any knowledge on those databases, you can recover to a specific point in time as long as one of those databases here is used. Yeah, here I show the screenshots for different databases. They almost look the same. It's very easy to configure. You just have to select the amount of time between each log cycle and how long you want to keep those logs. Don't keep them too long, obviously, because this fine granularity is only needed for the last 2 or 3 days, because on top you, of course, still have the backups you do every night, and these will be kept for a longer time. Pros here, it's also very easy to implement because it's right in the GUI, just a click of a mouse. It's using a so-called guest helper. So we need a component on the client side, which is implemented by Veeam. It's actually pushed into the VM before the backup, before the snapshot, and removed afterwards. And when you do log shipping, it's going to stay there for the log shipping process. So it's a small binary that is connecting to the database in the system and is fetching the logs in a supported way by the vendor of the database. So this is all fully supported because we are not using any special database tool here. Doesn't mean that the vendors don't support it, because it's a documented API that's used for SQL, for instance, or Oracle, and Veeam does just leverage this API and fetch the data via it. It can be LAN-less in certain scenarios. So on Hyper-V, for instance, you can use PowerShell Direct to even do log shipping without having a LAN connection to the VM. This is a special implementation needed in several scenarios. And you can even use it for the secondary node in SQL cluster scenarios. Here you might even want to choose from which node the log backup will be driven. So you can, for instance, prefer the secondary node to put the load away from the primary node who does the job for the users. And the secondary node then comes in charge when the log shipping is done. Cons on the other side, we have extra load within the workloads. The guest helper is running, it has to ship the logs, and we need some extra space in the repositories, of course, because these zipped logs from the database need to be stored somewhere. They are stored right there where your backups are also stored. So it's combined in the same folder. So what else do we have? Later in time, we had that time schedule before. Adrian had it in his slide deck, came the plugins for enterprise applications, because Veeam realized that there are certain applications that are not supportable by the matter we just talked about, by the way we just talked about. And one of the most important ones here is SAP HANA. SAP HANA cannot be backed up in a supported way by SAP using just the bare functionality of the product. You have to have a plugin here. And this is where those enterprise plugins come in. And what are enterprise plugins within Veeam? An enterprise plugin is a piece of software that is installed on the database server itself. So this is the server where the database is running, and the plugin is connecting directly to the backup module of the software, which in the case of SAP HANA is called backend. This plugin plugs into backend and simulates kind of a tape streamer to the backend software. And then the database administrator can set up a backup in the normal way he does, just within backend. And without this backend knowing it, the backup will not be generated on a disk. It will instead be pushed to the data mover on the repository and will be put into a repository. So it's some sort of a trick that tricks the SAP HANA backend system to think that this is a tape streamer and it can just push the data there. So the data flow is shown here in the chart, and we can do that same way with Oracle. With Oracle, we have Armen as the backup interface. This is a very old language. Armen is scripted backup. Yeah, you could do a training of 4 weeks when you want to get into how to use Armen. I'm not an expert in Armen, I have to admit, but Armen is well known by DBAs within the Oracle world, and they love it, and they only call something a backup that is produced using Armen. So when we plug in to Armen, we can leverage Armen to generate the backup. So same way here, we have the backup in the repository in the end, but it's generated not by Veeam itself, but it's generated by Armen and just pushed through the plugin into the repository. And the same is true now for SQL Server. We have in recent times in version 12, a plugin appeared for SQL Server. Here something is a little bit different. As you can see, there's a VDI device, but this is something in the technical background here we needn't dig into. We have a plugin for SAP on Oracle, somehow legacy, because this is going to go away because HANA is the database that's here to stay, and SAP will drop Oracle support one day. But still we have the plugin. There is one for DB2 and MariaDB as well. So this is not on the slide deck, but I know it's there, but it's somehow niche. So we have pros here. The biggest pro is it uses native database functionality. So the vendors love it. It's fully supported because actually backend, in case of SAP, does the backup, not Veeam does it. So they cannot say anything against it. And the plugins can even be managed from VBR when your plugins are run in the so-called managed mode, because you have the option to run those plugins in 2 modes. The managed mode means that you can even create backup jobs on the Veeam side. It's not a real backup job, it's more like a policy, because this policy pushes the backup schedule into the backup software on the workload. Because as I said, SAP HANA is doing the backup by itself using backend. So we need to have the backup job in backend. And the policy on the Veeam side just makes sure that there will be a backup job that correlates with the policy we created there. There's also an unmanaged mode. In the unmanaged mode, you have to do everything on the database side. There will be no jobs on the Veeam side. There will just appear jobs in the very moment when the database decides to produce a backup, but you cannot interfere at all with those jobs then. Cons here, it's a little bit more complex to set up because you have to deploy those plugins. They can be auto-deployed from Veeam, but still some caveats have to be taken into account. And you need an extra repository because it's not recommended to use the same repository for plugin backups that is used for regular backups because of the different type of write operations that are done by those plugins. In very small environments, we usually do it. But in larger environments, I would strongly recommend, there is something in the best practice guide of Veeam as well, I would recommend to create a certain repository or maybe bucket on an S3, because we will see S3 support very soon in the plugins as well. It's not there right now, but right now with disk-based repositories, create an extra repository for your plugin backups for performance reasons. And another heads up on the upgrades. If you do, and we had that several times with customers, when a new Veeam upgrade comes out, people tend to install it right away because Veeam does a brilliant job. It just works normally. Yeah, you can just install the upgrade and you rarely fail with it. But in this case, you might fail because if you just do the upgrade of your VBR server and neglect the plugins, it could be that the plugins after the upgrade cannot produce any backups anymore. I put a blog post on the community hub one day. You can still find it there because it's not as easy as it looks. You have to have VBR and the plugin in a version not further away than 2 version steps. But it's not like 12, 11, 10. it's more complicated. So it's if you, for instance, have a version 11, there has been an 11A as well, and certain other versions, and you always have to look closely into the documentation to find out what, in this case, will be considered 2 version steps for Veeam, because it changes, and it can change again with version 13. So once you have your plugins up and running, make sure before each and every upgrade to check whether all your plugins are in the correct version, because otherwise you might end up with a situation that your plugins don't produce any backups. And with those large crown jewel databases, this can lead to big problems easily, because if they don't create backups, they don't purge their logs, and the log volumes are limited, and the database stops once the log volume is full. I had customers that patched their databases on their VBR server on a Friday, and came back on Monday and found a HANA database being stuck because the log volume was full. So heads up on that. So there is a CDP functionality within Veeam. We had to wait for it for a certain time because it was something that Veeam promised with version 9.5 already, and it came up in version 10 then. I still remember because I've been on the Veeam On in New Orleans when it was announced there. And it was more complicated, the product, than they thought in the first place. But now it's there and it's running nicely. And it leverages a functionality of the ESXi hypervisor itself, which is a filter driver. Yeah? It's VAIO functionality. The filter driver is within vSphere. And Veeam leverages that and just brings in 2 more proxies. You need a source proxy and a target proxy, and this is a special proxy role. It's not the normal proxy. It's a proxy specifically for CDP. And with that, you can set up a CDP policy. It's something like a replication job, but it's not called a job. It's called a policy, because the difference is it's not run on a scheduled basis. It's running continuously. Because the filter driver makes sure that each and every write access to the source VM is being replicated to the target VM right away as fast as possible. And this only depends on the network bandwidth between those 2. So it can be considered an asynchronous replication, like you could do with some storage systems as well. You could define an SLA here as well. So you could say, I want my target VM not to be behind more than 60 seconds, for instance. And once it is more than 60 seconds away, it'll flag an error because you've failed then in your SLA. And this only depends on the network bandwidth. So if your network bandwidth between the 2 sites is not fast enough to cope with the changes on the source VM, it will never be able to transport it to the target side, of course. So you have to make sure that source and target and bandwidth are capable of fulfilling your needs here. The good point is that you will have a rolling buffer on the other side, and the rolling buffer includes all the changes to the target VM within the last, for instance, 4 hours of time. This is a setting that you can set when configuring the CDP policy. And this means then that you can fire up the target VM not only to the most recent point in time, but you can rewind back in time those 4 hours and start a certain point in time to allow for skipping, for instance, something bad that happened to your VM, for instance, a ransomware encryption or something like that. I will show something alike in a second. Pros are you get RPOs down to a few seconds. In theory, 2 seconds. In reality, I would say 60 seconds. Don't go smaller than 60 seconds because you will struggle with network problems then. It's a native Veeam functionality. It's storage agnostic. You can run it with each and every storage system, but it's vSphere only. So it's not there for all the other hypervisors. It will be there in version 13. Something is announced that we will see some CDP, but made in a different way, maybe completely different way. But we will see something for other hypervisors as well. And since 12.1, you could even do a file and object recovery from this circular rollback buffer. So you could, from a file server, recover a file from 5 minutes ago, for instance. Very nice functionality. Cons, you depend on the LAN bandwidth here, decides about how far away your target VM will be. You put a lot of extra load on the ESX. You have to filter out those writes and to transport them to the target system and inject them to the target VM as well. And it consumes extra storage on the VMFS data store. T-log files will be created by Veeam inside the VM's directory, and these T-log files will contain the rolling buffer, the circular buffer that contains all the changes to the VM. So we come to storage integration. Storage integration means we leverage storage snapshots from the underlying storage systems. We have two flavors here of integration. The built-in systems, these are the older ones, I would say, because in the first place, Veeam programmed those storage integrations by themselves in conjunction with the vendor. But at a later stage, Veeam decided to bring up a universal storage API, so let the vendors program or develop their plugins and then only certify them for usage with Veeam. And this is how it goes nowadays, so we won't see any new legacy plugins anymore. We will see universal storage plugins popping up when new storage systems enter the market. And I highlighted DataCore here because we will talk about something special DataCore does with this plugin that no other vendor can do, which I find very interesting. With the storage plugin in place, you can create a backup job that is a so-called snapshot-only job. And this job doesn't have a repository, it just has the snapshot as a target. So you can generate, with this job type, you can generate snapshots on your storage system and recover from those snapshots in a way of recovering instantly with an instant recovery, or you could even do an object recovery, like a file recovery or a mail recovery from an Exchange server, for instance. You can limit this type of backup to a certain amount of during the day, for instance, because usually what you want to do is combine it with a normal image level backup, of course, because snapshots are no backups. Snapshots go on top. It's very easy to implement, can even be application consistent. You can do instant recovery, object recovery, can be combined with a backup job like it is shown here. You do the backup job in the evening, and then throughout the day you do a lot of snapshots, and in the evening you do the next backup, and then you can drop all the snapshots because the evening backup already includes all the changes of the last day. Cons, snapshots are no backups. This is what I usually educate when people come with storage systems and say, with this and that storage system, I can have that amount of snapshots, I don't need any backups anymore. That's not the case. You need backups to a different system out of the bucket where your VMs reside. You need to define snapshot space to generate snapshots. The storage needs extra space to store the data, the delta, sorry. And you always snap a full LUN. You don't snap a VM. Here you snap a full LUN. So account for more delta here, because a lot of VMs live on the LUN and they all produce delta once the snapshot is there. And you might see some negative performance impact on the storage depending on the system. And now finally, where I want to show a demo also, some specialty that DataCore implemented with this snapshot integration. And this is a very neat functionality that brings us into the position to lower the RPO down to a matter of 1 second. It's a native functionality of DataCore. It has the same name like Veeam gave his CDP functionality, but with DataCore it's more than 10 years older. So they had the CDP already before Veeam was there. And this functionality does almost the same, but on the level of the storage system now. We have a ring buffer that stores all the changes to the LUN, to the storage LUN. And with the plugin for DataCore and Veeam being there, this functionality is integrated into the Universal Storage API. And this is unique. No other storage vendor has a functionality like that. I did a blog post on that if you're interested, the QR code here. And with that being said, the only thing you have to do on the data core side is you have to enable CDP and define the size of the ring buffer. Yeah. You have to know a little bit about how much change your VMs produce each and every day. And this ring buffer then decides about the amount of time that you can rewind when shit hits the fan, as you might say. And the creation of a rollback is very easy. You just enter the LUN here and go to rollbacks, and you can create a rollback. I will show that in a second in a live demo. And this rollback then is shown within Veeam like a snapshot. It is not a snapshot, but the plugin is programmed in a way that it makes this rollback being visible like a snapshot. And we can do everything with it like we can do with a snapshot. And this opens up very neat functionality. It's very easy to implement because it's storage driven, just a matter of a click here, click of a mouse. And you can recover many VMs to the same point in time, because if they live on the same LUN, if you recover that LUN, it's all the same point in time. You don't need any snapshots. No application consistency is possible. Be aware of that, because we have a rolling buffer. The changes are every second, so no snapshots at all, no application consistency. So this is only crash consistent, but this is the case with every asynchronous backup all the time. And also CDP, as it's a snapshot-like technology, it's not a backup, so it comes in addition to your regular backups. And here we come to the live demo. It's also a recording, but I will comment it live. I hope you can see it now nicely. This is a ESXi environment here, a vSphere environment, 2 hosts. Yeah, and we have two data core servers. This is an HCI environment, so hyper-converged. Those 2 boxes here provide the storage to the hosts. They have local store, of course, and they have 2 virtual disks that are generated virtually out of those local stores, yeah, and are shared between the 2 systems. This now is a peek into the data core systems behind it. On the 2 nodes, we have a data core system running, and here you can see the 2 virtual disks. Yeah. One has 300 gigabytes, one 400, and the one with 400 has this functionality enabled that we are going to leverage in a second. This one has not. It's a synchronous mirror between the 2 ESXi nodes, so it's fail-safe. And the next one here is also a synchronous mirror, and the specialty here is the continuous data protection is enabled, and the rolling buffer right now provides us 2 hours and 11 minutes of rollback time. Can be configured down here. Continuous data protection is just enabled by a click of a box, and the rolling buffer is defined in its size here. You have to account for that, obviously. Okay. Let's scroll forward. Yeah, the Veeam server here just looks like a normal, regular Veeam server. We have a file server here, which is crucial for our company, and the last backup has been run 9 hours ago. And we have a storage plugin installed, the Data Core Storage plugin. This enables the communication of the Veeam backup server with Data Core, the storage stack behind it, and it shows us the 2 virtual disks here. This corresponds with those 2 disks. They are seen through the API in the communication with the Data Core stack. But as you can see, there are no snapshots right now. Veeam didn't show any snapshots. These are the 2 disks here, and here are the 2 disks. It would be able to create a snapshot now, but I'm not going to do that, because a snapshot is a point in time, and I don't want to have a point in time. I want to have this continuous rollback possibility. Now we are on our file server, and the file server is being backed up by Veeam. Last backup 9 hours ago. And on this file server, we have crucial data, of course, because it's a file server. And within the file server, we also have a fierce ransomware there, which we don't know anything about right now. And the 2 important files here is a text file with absolutely crucial information. And on top, we have PDF file, which is crucial for our company as well. Guess what it is. And now someone somewhere starts the ransomware. The ransomware here is a PowerShell script, and one of your users inadvertently clicked the wrong button, and now your data is gone, because inside the text file we only have random encrypted data, and the PDF file seems broken. Yeah, it cannot be opened anymore. So the ransomware has destroyed our data on the file server within a matter of seconds. And what options do we have right now? We have a backup of the file server, but the backup is 9 hours old. So maybe the files that are there, 10 hours right now, the files might not even be in the backup, because it might be that I just put them there. We don't have a snapshot because we didn't know when the failure will happen, so we didn't create a snapshot. But what we could do now is create a rollback, because we have this rolling buffer. We can rewind the amount of time that we think the problem occurred. Maybe you have to do some forensics beforehand. And then we can decide whether this rollback point should be an expiring rollback point or a persistent one. In case of a real attack, choose the persistent one, because it means that this rollback point will be saved from being discarded. Because if the rollback buffer gets too small, what DataCore does, it discards the rollback point to keep the mirror. In this case, when we say it's a persistent rollback, it won't keep the mirror. It will still keep the actual data, but only from one side, and the other side will keep the snapshot or the rollback point, which is wise in case of a real attack. And now we can just rescan the volume, and magically something will appear that looks to Veeam like a snapshot, but it is no snapshot. Actually, it's a rollback point. We just create it manually and to the very specific point in time that we need. And now we can do everything with that rollback point that Veeam can do. It shows the contents of the rollback point, which are those two systems. It's a domain controller and our file server. And we can just right-click the file server, and these are the options that Veeam offers us with every snapshot integrated storage. But here in this case, it's not a snapshot, it's a rollback point being manually created to the very second where the problem occurred. And I will speed that up a little bit, because that process now takes 2 minutes or so, because it has to mount that snapshot. It'll create a snapshot out of the rollback point, because in the end Veeam has to talk to a snapshot. This will all be done automatically by the plugin. It will be mounted to an ECXI host, and then the data will be fetched out of it. And as I don't want us to wait for it, I will skip that until the process is finished. It will do a resignaturing, and then finally in the end you will see another file server on your VMware side. Hold on a second. And then finally the dialog will open up that allows us to restore the files. So what we did now is a file level recovery from the server, and the important file here still has the crucial information inside, because it's 6 minutes old. It's the point in time before the ransomware struck. And the same could be done with an instant recovery. Here in the next step, we will do an instant recovery. We will give the file server another name. This is the second option we have. We could just recover the full file server, and I will call it file server CDP. And then it'll take some time. I will scroll forward now. And all of a sudden we will see, hold on, a file server booting, and this is the 6-minute-old file server that still carries the valid data inside. So far for the demo. Let me just remove that and get back to the slide deck. This brings me to the end of this overview of CDP and small CDPs. And You might know that Honey, I Shrunk the RPO relates to some movie picture. I'm in business for some time already, as you might see. There was a movie in the late 80s which was called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Quite a ridiculous movie. Don't go for it. But this brought me to the title, and here are the movie posters that the AI brought up. And again, here we have the typos inside, of course. AI isn't that smart right now, but that's the idea that the AI had about the movie about RPOs and shrinking them. So, any questions on that? I'd be more than happy to answer.
I don't think there's anything in the chat at the moment, Michael. I think Adrian's put a link into a VSSP blog for CDP, but no, that was a really informative session. Thank you.
And thanks for the flowers, Adrian.
Excellent. Right, if there's no questions, I think we'll move on to the hotly anticipated.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thomas just saying, great demo. And yeah, I'd just like to thank all our presenters. So Jim, Adrian, Thomas and Michael, thank you very much for giving up your time today.
Yeah, really great sessions. We do appreciate the support, because without folks like yourself supporting these events, there really isn't an event. And anyone else who's on the call, if you would like to present a topic in the future, we'd love to hear from you. Even if you're unsure of presenting, maybe it's your first time, we're also here to help you along with that journey if that's something you're interested in. It is a community after all. We all had our first session once upon a time.
My first one was last year. I remember it well.
You go. So yeah, if there's anyone else interested, please let us know. But again, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Right. I think it's that time of day and the quiz.
Ooh, do we know what the prizes are, Mark?
It is, I think it's 75, 50 and £25 vouchers kindly donated by Scality.
Yeah, so you've got something in your Amazon wish list or in your basket, this could be your chance to impulse buy it. Why not? If only 3 people join, then you've all won already. So that's anyone.
Yeah. You just go to kahoot.it and just enter that pin. Just give it another minute or two and then we'll make a start. Yeah, we've got a few users in there, so right. If everyone's happy, we'll make a start. So it's one of the key features of CDP.
So if you've not played before on your side, you should see the 4 different colors or shapes to pick one for the correct answer. Oh, mixed opinion.
Derek stealing the lead there. So move on to the next one.
The question is, what is one of the advantages of using data core continuous data protection? Answers are requires frequent snapshots, application consistency. I'm not going to get this done. RPOs 1 second or requires no additional storage space. Most got that right. You're all paying attention. We'll like to see that.
Excellent. Right, we'll go on to the next one. Where can the most up-to-date best practices for VB365 8.1 be found? Kool-Aid.info, the VB365 Best Practice Guide, the VCSP Best Practice Guide, or the 8.1 release notes? Oh, getting close at the top.
I don't think I've seen that fire symbol before. There you go.
So what function does NAT perform? It's an annoying flying in your face, task queuing, Exchange Graph API integration, or does it do the SharePoint job sizing discovery element? I'm going with the annoyingly flying in your face for this one. Look at that, Arnie consolidating his spot there at the top. So what's the maximum source data you can protect with the Arteska and Veeam unified appliance? 24 terabytes, 240 terabytes, 1 petabyte, or 2 petabytes?
Everyone was quick to click there.
Yeah. I think this is the last question. How many steps are required to install Arteska and the Veeam unified software appliance with version 12 Windows? Everyone's quick to answer there. Let's wait for the countdown. So we've got Derek third, Josh, and then Arnie in first. It's brilliant. What I'll do, I will stop sharing in a second. If you guys, winners, would like to email me, I'm just going to put my email in the chat. And if you just email me on that, and we'll arrange to get your voucher sent out to you. And hopefully you can all just see that you can all get that email address there.
Yeah, your email address has to match the name you used in the quiz as well.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
But no, has anybody got any questions or anything in general? Perfect. I'd just like to thank everyone for sticking with us and giving us your time today. I appreciate you taking time out of the working day, but we really do appreciate the support. And again, thank you very much to our presenters. We're very humbled to have you presenting.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah,
See you
good
on
job.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
having
much.
us.
It's been an honor.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Cheers all. Thank you.
Bye.
See you. Bye.